Hello trainers, Professor Palm here, and welcome back to Summer Splash. Now, let's play a little game today. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say water type? What are you thinking of right now? Did some of you think of oceans? Did some of you think of rivers? Or did some of you think of lakes? I'm pretty sure it's one of the three I just said. However, one of the places with water that I really feel rarely ever gets talked about are bogs, marshes, and swamps. It's okay if no one thought of the bogs, the swamp, or even the marshes. When you think of water, you think of something clear, crystal, and blue. You don't like the idea of seeing such murky water with a horrible stench as well as all that disgusting mud. In my opinion, however, I find the swamp a really cool place. If you can get past the stench and all the mud, they really introduce a lot of cool Pokemon. After all, this is the place that introduced Mudkip, Marshtomp, and Swampert. They also have a lot of cool life that lives there. I know that the place can be rather revolting and very messy, but sometimes you have to take risks in order to meet such amazing life. However, one thing that also comes to mind when thinking of all the mud and being in the bog or even the swamp are reptiles. I love reptiles as much as I love bird Pokemon. Most of them are cold-blooded creatures and they need the warmth of the mud to keep them going. So yeah, one of those lines that I really like to see by the swamp is also one of my favorite Unova lines introduced. And I'm of course talking about the first ever Toad line with Tympole, Palpitoad, and of course the king of croaking, Seismitoad. For me, this is one of my favorite lines introduced in the Unova region. I really wanted a Toad line, and I'm so glad that we finally got it. I think something that I really love about this line with Tympole, Palpitoad, and Seismitoad is not just of their really cool typing, which I really like the Swampert as well as the Quagsire line, but I also like that they fight using sound. Now, some Pokemon who use sound for fighting is nothing new, but this was the first line that I ever raised that truly made me want the sound typing. After the fairy typing was introduced, I really am still hoping that we get ourselves to the sound type, especially if Generation 10 comes around. Another thing that I really like about this line is that they're also protectors of the bog. We've met a lot of Pokemon that come from the swamp, but these are the ones who actually try to protect it. A lot of us overlook the fact that the swamp is a home for so many other creatures out there. A lot of us just pass it by because we think it's disgusting out there. But remember, every Pokemon has different habitats. Some of them have it much grosser than others, just like the Trubbish and Garbodor line, but even they still deserve a home. You know what makes me laugh the most about Seismitoad along with Tympole and Palpitoad? It's the fact that these Pokemon are the ones that yell at you, "Get out of my swamp!" Well, seeing that they really don't like intruders, and that a lot of things happen there, I don't really blame them. They really need to be by the water, because these Pokemon dry out very quickly, and being covered in mud seems kind of messy, but to some of them, that's what keeps them warm and keeps them going. So yeah, let's travel to the swamp today and learn everything we need to know about these cool toads. But before we do that, I want to give a very special thanks and shout out to my collaboration partner, Primordial Halo, aka Professor Sassafras herself. I know how much you love this line, Professor Sassafras, so I hope that you enjoy this video to the fullest. However, there's one more person I want to thank today. A very special thanks and shout out also goes to artist Techrenova for my shirt. Today's Within shirt that I'm wearing is the Water Samurai Within. Since we're talking about Unova water-type Pokemon, what better line can you think of? Also, Samurott, Oshawott, and Duwat were my first friends in the Unova region. If you really like these shirts that I wear, you can buy them on Etsy. I have a link to Techrenova's Etsy shop in the description below. So please check her out and maybe buy a shirt. You'll look amazing in it. And don't forget to say, Professor Palm sent ya. Trainers, you might want to open your ears because the croaking is going to be so loud. You know what's actually funny? These are the Pokemon that inspired the earphone, the earmuff, as well as the headphones. So we're going to listen to sounds like no other by the swamp. And we're going to start off with the little tadpole itself, Tympole! Tympole the tadpole Pokemon is based on a toad tadpole. The spherical bumps on its head resemble headphones. They also are very reminiscent of switches on a loudspeaker. Also, when looking at its eyes and eyebrows, it resembles music notes, specifically quarter notes. If you want to find a Tympole in the wild, you can find them in watery areas, or in places with lots of mud. They like murky waters, as the mixture of mud and water makes them feel right at home. Tympole create high-pitched sounds by vibrating its blue cheeks, and they're able to make such great music. Some people even say that the design of headphones came from this Pokemon. The use of sound is very important to Tympole, as it uses sound waves to communicate with others of its kind as well as others. They have their own language that's very similar to that of Morse code. Tympole feel the most when swimming with other members of its line or with other Tympole in a group. However, if Tympole is isolated, it's put under a lot of stress and cries out loudly. In a group, Tympole work together to attack foes, and some of their sound-based attacks become so powerful together. Even a move like Round becomes as powerful as Boom Burst with a group. Tympole are very protective Pokemon, and they try to warn others, especially when they enter their territory. Unfortunately, people and most Pokemon can't hear the cries of this warning, as it's too high-pitched. However, there are some Pokemon that can understand, especially ones with good hearing. While these cries can be very important, as some Tympole make distress cries, it's upsetting that most people cannot hear them. But most Pokemon can, and usually come to the aid of a distressed one. If you like going to ponds, lakes, or even bogs, sometimes you'll see ripples running across the water surface. This is actually coming from Tympole singing in their high-pitched voices under the water. Speaking of which, Tympole love to sing, and thankfully, they're not tone-deaf Pokemon. They actually have some really good voices. They can even hit a high-pitched note so hard they can shatter glass. Some people even believe that opera all started with this Pokemon. Despite having no arms and not even legs, Tympole can jump very high in the air out of water. Some of them can get as high as 8 feet. Tympole love berries, as they have a sweet tooth for both the Prism and the Pekka berry. If you happen to find one, there's a 50% chance it could be holding either one. Tympole debuted in the Black and White series episode, Facing Fear with Eyes Wide Open, where they all attacked Oshawott underwater as they were under the command of a wild Palpitoad, trying to prevent Oshawott from getting the medicine. However, when Oshawott finally opened his eyes, he used Razor Shell and made all of them flee. I'm sensing some good vibrations, but they're also getting stronger, which means, oh yay! Our little Tympole is about to evolve. It's going to hop onto its next stage. So, let's evolve Tympole into Palpitoad. You better turn down that volume, because I think that it's about to get really loud in the swamp. Palpitoad the Vibration Pokemon is based on a Toad tadpole, while it's in its Poliwag stage. The lumps on its head are inspired by headphones as well as boom boxes. However, it also draws inspiration from loudspeaker drivers. If you want to catch yourself a Palpitoad in the wild, you can find them around the bogs, living in both the murky water and the mud. They also love the feeling of mud all around them and being soaked. Palpitoad live in groups of anywhere from 6 to 12 members, which include other Palpitoad, Seismitoad, or even Tympole. Some of them even serve as a leader to a Tympole group, where they like to play the role of the big boss, very similar to that of Honchkrow. Being amphibians, Palpitoad can live on both the land and the water. However, the reason they don't stray far from the water's edge is because they need their skin moisturized in order to keep breathing properly. Being too far away from the water or being too dry will make them desperate and aggressive. Just like with the Whismur, Loudred, and Exploud line, Palpitoad's weapon of choice is sound. Since they lack arms, they vibrate the bumps on their head, which has the power to cause earthquakes and even make waves rise through their vibrations. Oh, and speaking of those big blue bumps on its head, Palpitoad used them to hunt. It weakens prey with sound waves intense enough to cause headaches. However, this can be a double-edged sword, as they can also bring ear-splitting headaches to humans as well as some of their own friends. You may never have realized this, but Palpitoad are surprisingly great singers. Some of their cries and vibrations they make are very pleasant to the ear. In fact, there are some that actually work in a quartet. Oh, and Palpitoad with large lumps on their bodies can sing in a wider range of sound. Since Palpitoad don't have arms, they use their tongues to fight. The tongue is sticky and can be as long as 4 feet to ensnare their prey. Also, since it's coated with horrible fumes from the mud, they can also paralyze and even poison their prey. For mating season, groups of Palpitoad can be heard singing complex rhythms, as this is part of their mating rituals. They also vibrate the circular bumps on their head in a various pattern. Usually the one at the loudest ends up with a mate. Despite its small tail, this really helps Palpitoad balance itself, mainly for the fact that it doesn't have arms and the lumps on its head weigh a lot. These little tails also act as a propeller whenever they're underwater. Sometimes they also act as a hand, helping Palpitoad carry mud and sticks. Palpitoad made its debut in the Black and White series episode, Facing Fear with Eyes Wide Open, where it served as the leader for a group of Tympole after Ash's Oshawott was trying to retrieve seaweed to help heal its poisoned friends. Oshawott and Palpitoad had a big battle, which resulted in Ash capturing it. With the sounds of them croaking, as well as all the vibrations that you can hear from the lumps on their head, Palpitoad really love to make their presence known all around bogs and swamps. They're kind of a party animal. However, they can get bigger and louder. So yeah, we're gonna crank the volume to max through evolution. So let's hop to evolution as Palpitoad evolves into Seismitoad. Now it's time to meet the Sultan of the Swamp and the King of Croaking. Seismitoad, the vibration Pokemon, is based on the Japanese common toad. However, it's also based on the common Surnium toad, as well as the Cuyaba dwarf frog. However, Seismitoad also draws inspiration to a loudspeaker. For those of you who are reptile lovers and you want to catch yourself a Seismitoad in the wild, they can be found inhabiting muddier lands like swamps and bogs, as they really like their privacy. So they choose oxygen-poor environments, which the stench is horrible as they love repulsive smells. When looking at Seismitoad's body, you'll notice it has blue lumps all over the place. Every one of them has a varying capability, and some of these lumps can do much different things than others, whether it be on its front or on its back. Being the first one of its line to officially have arms, Seismitoad's arms may look small and scrawny, but you'd be wrong, as they're surprisingly strong. By increasing the power of its punches through its vibrating bumps, Seismitoad have the power to punch a garbage truck. They can even smash a boulder to rubble with just a single punch. Seismitoad have a little bit of a fascination with the Richter scale when in battle. By smashing its arms into the ground, Seismitoad can even use the vibration bumps all over its body to cause little earthquake-like tremors to its opponent, knocking them on the ground. Oh, and have you noticed the lumps on Seismitoad's head? Kinda hard not to, but they're used for communication. It vibrates them to other Seismitoad, Palpitoad, and Tympole, in a language that only they can understand, very similar to that of Morse code. So yeah, these Pokemon all have their own language of vibration. However, you might want to stand far away from those big bumps on their head, because they shoot a powerful paralyzing liquid immediately from these lumps. This is used against prey. However, they also do this towards intruders. Just like with the Whismur, Loudred, and Exploud line, Seismitoad also use sound for battle. They have the power to make a horrible croaking sound, as well as have terrible vibrations with all the bumps, causing ear-splitting headaches and a lot of tremors within a 2-mile radius. However, the pendulum does swing both ways, and in the Galar region, Seismitoad is popular amongst old folks as a massage therapist. The vibrations of its lumps are great for massages, which also help a lot of old folks feel young again. Seismitoad are protective of its group, and they do not take well to intruders. Even if they were disadvantaged, Seismitoad are risk takers because they always fight whenever they sense danger. If you think Seismitoad smells awful, you might want to hold your breath around Seismitoad for a complete other reason, because Seismitoad are infamous for their hallucinogenic toxins that they secrete from under the skin of the mud they live in. It's best to wear a gas mask around this muddy toad. Seismitoad build their territories by spitting out mud they collect in their mouth, and never touch this mud, because its saliva from its tongue is coated with a powerful poison that could have serious health consequences. Seismitoad debuted in the Black and White Rival Destinies series episode, The Clubsplosion Begins, where Edmund Seismitoad battled Stefan Sock, and during this fight, it nearly gained the upper hand against Sock with its swift swim ability. However, Seismitoad ultimately lost after Stefan Sock's low sweep injured its legs, slowing it down. With over 1,000 Pokemon in this world, each of them has some cool facts about them of what makes them so special. So let's do the same, and here's a few fun facts about our Bog buddies, Tympole, Palpitoad, and Seismitoad. Tympole shares its category of the tadpole Pokemon with the Poliwag, Poliwhirl, and Poliwrath line, while Palpitoad and Seismitoad share their category of the vibration Pokemon with Vibrava. Despite all this line having the water typing, they're the only Unova water-type Pokemon that cannot learn the move Dive. Tympole is one of N's Pokemon that you can find on your adventure after using the memory link. Also, it's one of the few unobtainable Unova Pokemon in Black and White 2, as the only way you can get it in Unova 2 years later is through trading or breeding. Palpitoad's cry the game is based off the sound of a tree frog's mating call. According to the Pokedex in Galar, Seismitoad, Croagunk, and Toxicroak are distant relatives, and they get along very well together. You can usually find them in the wild, building colonies in bogs. Tympole, Palpitoad, and Seismitoad all have the same first ability, being Swift Swim, which boosts their speed when it rains. They also have the same hidden ability of Water Absorb, that when they're hit by a water-type move, instead of taking damage, instead their HP restores. However, they each have a different secondary ability. You see, Palpitoad and Tympole have the same possible second ability of Hydration, which heals their status condition while it's raining, while Seismitoad has the secondary ability of Poison Touch, which poisons the foe if this Pokemon makes contact with it with a physical move. So it's basically the opposite of the ability Poison Point. But also on a cool note, Seismitoad is currently the only non-poison type Pokemon to have this ability. Also, Tympole, Palpitoad, and Seismitoad share a lot of things in common with the Mudkip, Marshtomp, and Swampert line. Both these lines are based off amphibians. Both these lines also are a 3-stage line that start off as a pure water type in basic stage before gaining the ground typing in their second stage and keeping that as their final stage. And at last, Swampert and Seismitoad both evolve at level 36, and they also have a similar color scheme, the same typing, and on a cool note, both these Pokemon have the same height of 4'11". Being at the bog makes Tympole, Palpitoad, and Seismitoad feel very happy, especially with all that mud. They love being covered in it, and of course, they love the smell, which makes them feel right at home. However, almost all Pokemon have weaknesses, but Tympole, Palpitoad, and Seismitoad are divided. You see, Tympole is a pure water-type Pokemon, while Palpitoad and Seismitoad are water and ground-type Pokemon. With Tympole's typing of pure water typing, when it goes into battle, it only has 2 weaknesses when it's hit by attacks which are Grass-type and Electric-type. Only 2 weaknesses for Tympole, which is not bad, but when Tympole levels up and eventually evolves into either Palpitoad or again as Seismitoad, it also gains a new typing of ground. However, it also loses one of its weaknesses, but gains even greater danger with a new ×4 weakness. Of course, that weakness to them is grass, which is a major ×4 weakness, as both Seismitoad and Palpitoad's dual typings do not take well to it. Some people say the grass is always greener on the other side. I don't think Palpitoad or Seismitoad would ever agree. So all in all, Tympole, Palpitoad, and Seismitoad all have different weakness pools. While they have many different weaknesses, they also learn a lot of water and ground type moves, as these Pokemon are one with the earth. Since it is made of water and ground, they're honestly Pokemon that are one with the land and the sea. Tympole, being a pure water type Pokemon, learns a lot of good water type moves with some strong stab against Pokemon who are the types of fire type, rock type, and ground type. It's great to see Tympole has more over on strengths than it does weaknesses, but as time goes on and it levels up, it gets even stronger. So once again, let's evolve Tympole twice into Palpitoad and then Seismitoad. And now, with its new added typing of ground, it has more strengths, as it has stab water type and ground type moves that are super effective on Pokemon who are fire type, steel type, rock type, poison type, ground type, and electric type. But electric type also acts as a strength. Because they're ground, they won't take any damage from electric type attacks. Wow! 6 strengths for both Palpitoad and Seismitoad. What a massive upgrade. Well, these are fighters of the bog, and they teach you an important lesson. When you play in the mud, things are gonna get messy. We've had so many frog Pokemon over the years. I'm glad that we finally changed things up when we got Toad Pokemon with Tympole, Palpitoad, and Seismitoad. I think this is an awesome first Toad line ever. I hope that we get more in the future, as Toads are just as cool as frogs. But I also really like the whole sound thing going on with these Pokemon, with vibrations as well. I really think this is a line that really needs the sound typing. I really like that they make bogs and swamps their own home. Palpitoad, Seismitoad, and Tympole really know how to make good life there. I also really think that the life that lives at the swamp is really cool. Actually, a lot of Pokemon who make their homes at the swamp have a really amazing life. While they're always on guard for intruders, you should know rule number 1 of the swamps. When you walk into the mud, you're gonna get messy. I've always wanted there to be a sound typing, but I think that this would make a great thing for this line, especially if they were given regional variants. Tympole, Palpitoad, and Seismitoad all would work great with the sound typing, either as water and sound or even ground and sound. But one thing I gotta say about these Pokemon is I really do love the vibrations and the noises they make. When you take them on, you're gonna hear the croaking. Seismitoad, Palpitoad, and Tympole all know how to make the swamp such an amazing place. Not just with their vibrations or music, but they really know how to put on a good show. Sure, the place they live might be a little toxic, smelly, and very buggy, but it's their home. And if you choose to go into the swamp, they'll be the first ones to greet you, saying, "Welcome to the bog." Welcome back, trainers. I hope that you enjoyed your journey at the swamp. It may have been a little gross and kind of pungent, but there's so many things that you can see there, and even life that you wouldn't expect there. So, before we end this, I just have a few questions for all of you. Since Tympole, Palpitoad, and Seismitoad are water and ground type, along with the Quagsire line and the Mudkip, Marshstomp, and Swampert line, who do you think is the best line with this typing? We have a lot of frog as well as toad Pokemon. What do you think that we need in the future region? Do you think that we need another frog Pokemon line, or would you like to see another toad line? We could find water type Pokemon in so many places. Where's your favorite place to find a water type Pokemon? Do you prefer oceans? Do you prefer lakes? Do you prefer rivers? Or do you prefer swamps? Or do you prefer the brackish water over saltwater or fresh water? When it comes to reptilian or amphibian Pokemon, who's your favorite line based on it? Or have they not made it? Also, what Pokemon do you think should come next based on either a reptile or an amphibian? And at last, we have so many water type Pokemon. Which region do you think introduced the best water type Pokemon out of all of them? I hope that you enjoyed what you saw, trainers, and I hope that you can visit all places with lots of water. So, if you liked what you saw, please leave a like. If you have any questions, you want to answer any of the questions I threw at you, you want me to cover another water type Pokemon or another water type line, or there's another Pokemon line that needs to be covered, or you need me to talk about something going on in the current events of Pokemon, then please comment. And as always, if you like what you saw and you want to see more, smash that subscribe button. As a Pokemon professor, it's my job to teach trainers like all of you out there. And I hope that you're enjoying Summer Splash. Stay cool, trainers. Palm out.